Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Great Exchange. We are going to do a little special bonus episode today. If you're here, it means that you're part of our deeper circle. It's the folks who want not just the stories, but also the tools and something you can reach for in the moment when things feel charged, overwhelming, or tender. So often the hardest moments don't happen when we're calm and reflective. They happen when we're flooded. Our nervous system takes over when we feel reactive, shut down, defensive, or like the younger part of us has grabbed the steering wheel. This is what this mini episode is for. And so I wanted to create something short, something you can return to, a micro practice for real life. This is not theory, it's not perfection, it's just anchors for you to reach for in real time. So I'm grateful to have Jenni back with us. Jenni is a licensed clinical social worker based out of Oregon, whose work really centers around reparenting, nervous system regulation, and creating these moments to repair and be with our children.
Hi,
Welcome back, Jenni.
thank you.
So, Jenni is going to share three but simple, powerful questions that we can ask ourselves in the moment. Questions that may be able to help us to pause or notice what's happening and choose a response that's rooted in compassion rather than survival. So, Jenni, I'm so glad you're here, and I'd love for you to share your wisdom.
Thank you for having me. Um, yeah, okay, so let's see. One question I would use, and this is a question I use regularly, it's something I offer regularly, is what is the story I'm telling myself about this situation right now? A lot of times we experience in the moment situations from either a past or a future lens, and we lose sight of what's actually happening in the moment. So I try to say, like, what is the story I'm telling myself about what's happening right now? And it gives us the ability to almost observe ourselves from the outside to get a different perspective on what's happening, right? So if we're having a really big, mm, you know, let's just call it like a fight or flight response. You're overwhelmed, you're emotionally flooded, you are foggy, you can't think straight, your body doesn't seem to be working, you're just overstimulated and overwhelmed. There's possibility that part of that is an addition of an unhelpful narrative that might be contributing to a hormonal biological response that you're having. Because I do think it's fair to say that we are going to have biological responses to our babies and to our children. And so we want to pay attention. Is there anything being added to that experience that might be emphasizing the severity of what we're feeling, or that might be catastrophizing something that we are experiencing? And can we almost take the hat of that additional narrative off so that we can stay present in the moment and soothe ourselves from an in the moment framework? So what is the story I'm telling myself about what's happening right now?
Yeah, I love that. And it seems like it's really a tool, not necessarily to solve anything in that moment or address maybe that underlying, but really just to give us that little space to understand where it's coming from and give us that little separation of what am I going to do now?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, if that question feels inaccessible or too difficult, or it's not the right time, or it's not the right moment, that's okay. If the what of something feels too hard, if the what of something, so what is the story? If that's too difficult, if that's too far away, I shift to the where. Where in my body is this happening? Where in my body am I experiencing this discomfort? Where in my body is this distress rooted? And if I can name where in my body I am feeling this disturbance, this distress, this ick, whatever it is, I can then soothe that particular part of my body. So if I don't have access to the what, shift to the where. Where in me is this happening? Because then I can physically, tangibly offer that part of my body something that might feel comforting or soothing. And if that part of my body can get a little bit of soothing, might then there be room for what is the story I'm telling myself? So if the initial what isn't available, shift to the where.
Can you give us an example of like one part of our body and where it shows up? And what is one tool that we could practice to soothe that part of our body?
Sure. Let's say, for example, that ick, tension, distress, we're going to call it, it'd be called a million different things, right? Let's say it shows up kind of in my center of my chest, right? And it's tight, or maybe it feels like I can't take a whole breath, or maybe my heart is racing really fast, or maybe there's just like a tightness, right? I can simply just offer a hand to my chest with some, right, just a little bit of pressure in your hand to your chest to acknowledge your body, to say, I see you. I feel this. I know where it is. I'm just naming that it's happening, right? Or go to the freezer and grab your favorite preferred bag of frozen whatever. Peas, corn, whatever you've got in there. And put that on your chest, right? Lay it on your chest. Offer it some comfort as just saying, I acknowledge you. I acknowledge that this is happening. I acknowledge that this is where it's happening, right? Maybe that tension lives on the side of your neck, right? Maybe it's in your stomach. Maybe it's in your hips or your shoulders, right? So just offering that part of your body a touch, a soothing of some sort, a temperature shift of some kind, to acknowledge that we are not forgetting about our body. I'm not passing over it and jumping right into what do I think about this feeling, right? The intellectualization of it. We're not skipping over our body. Oftentimes, just offering something to our body in acknowledgement gives us a little bit of space to access comfort or go find something or go find a tool or go find an item of comfort to offer our body. But we can't offer ourselves comfort or soothing if we don't take a minute to say, well, where do I need comfort? Where does that soothing need to occur?
I love this practice. I do think what you're saying about intellectualizing, we often think about, okay, what do I need to do to acknowledge it? And really, sometimes the best is just giving ourselves a little hug, and acknowledgement is the best medicine right then in that moment. And not overcomplicating. Sometimes their body just needs a little extra love.
I think another thing that, I explore a lot in my work, more so from a clinical perspective, but not so much I find it talked about just generally or, out in the world, is remembering that like our body is a system. Our body has systems in place that work perfectly. Our automatic nervous system, like it works perfectly. Our sympathetic and our parasympathetic nervous systems, they are designed to keep us safe. They are designed to help us function, but they are systems in our body. And so when we have a systematic response to something, rational or not, we can that's our body communicating to us. There's either an actual threat or a perceived threat. Now, if you're in your home with your kiddo and they're having a tantrum, or you're with your baby trying to soothe them and they have been screaming for hours, and you look around and you say, well, there's no bear here. Is there an actual bear in the nursery? Is there an actual bear here? And if there's no actual bear, then is there a perceived threat that your body is picking up on? Right now, if there is actually a bear, please do, in fact, allow that part of your body, that system, to work appropriately. I mean, let's let it do what it's supposed to do. If there's no bear, is there a perception of threat occurring? And so we can communicate, that's our body communicating to us. I'm perceiving a threat, warning, danger, danger, right? It just means that we can communicate back to our body. It means we can communicate back to the system of our body to say, hey, you seem to be picking up on something. So thank you so much for that. However, we're actually not in danger. And I can communicate that back to you, right? So there are systems in our body that pick up on that. So doing things like humming, gurgling, singing, dancing, holding ice in our hands, stomping, a little bit of self massage on the sides of our neck. These stimulate nerves in our body that are directly communicating to that fight or flight response, that perceived threat, and saying, hey, we're actually not in danger. I am having some really big feelings about this very uncomfortable situation, but we're not actually in danger. So might it be okay to come down a little bit so that I can further take care of myself? So gargling, humming, singing, dancing, holding ice in your hands, um, pushing against the wall, almost as if you're doing like really slow, purposeful wall push-ups, but just gently pushing against the wall and letting your chest and your body come back, right? These are communicating to your body, hey, we're not actually in danger. We're actually okay. Because,
Is there moments, as you're describing this, we talked about in our main episode, these moments of modeling this to our children, right? Say like, I'm having this moment, I need to do something physical out loud. But this feels a little bit different, right? In acknowledging where we are, um, what is happening physically to our body, and creating some sort of repeatable, I'm going to call it a mantra because I don't know what else to call it, but a
mm-hmm,
repeatable task that signals to our bodies that we are safe. If I'm verbalizing it, that's what it feels like. Is that a fair like assessment, right? We're trying to identify some sort of tool, saying, movement, activity that signals to our body that we're not being chased by a bear and that we can come back to that baseline, or at least come down from
yeah.
extreme emotional flooding.
I think if we're talking about an in the moment flooded experience where we are kind of in activation, a message needs to come in conjunction with a somatic response. The physicality, the somatic communication to your body is the thing that really supports in soothing the systematic response. And the goal in that regulation of the system is not necessarily to get calm. If you do this and you get to a place of calm, that's amazing. Wonderful. But it's not necessarily the goal. One of the goals is to get back to that parasympathetic nervous system, which isn't necessarily a constant state of calm. I'm meditative, right? This very kind of like hyper soothed state. It's just a state where the systems are systeming. Your heart rate is back to normal. Your digestion is, moving appropriately. Your mouth is producing saliva again. It's just all the different systems in our body. We just want them to get back to a place of systeming.
Is this a relatively new concept? I ask because I have years of therapy and knowing friends who are in talk therapy. It's not a concept you see widely used in actually physical expression of what's happening in the body as self regulation, right? We try to verbalize, intellectualize, breathe our way back to it. And breathing is obviously a physical response, but it's kind of the main tool you see. Is this a newer concept or ideology around responding to our body in the way that our body can receive information in that moment?
I think it depends on what we're classifying as new. I think it's being more widely explored on a more mainstream level in the last, couple of decades. People are researching it. There's more writing about it. You'll see more books about it, more authors, more. So there's a lot more information about it. But it's also about even if there is research, even if there is information that backs up a way to support our bodies therapeutically, if no one's getting that information, it's not helpful. If no one's hearing about it, if nobody has access to that book, if nobody has access to that research or that information, it doesn't really matter. And so, while there has been some difficult things that have come from how we get information and social media and the internet that are challenging, it also opens up pathways to get information about what is happening in our body. What is a system? What can we do to actually communicate to our physical body? Not so just from an emotional standpoint or an intellectual, but a systematic approach to our body. It's about getting the information, which I think has come about a lot more in the last couple of decades.
What I love about these questions is that, you touched on this, is they don't require you to become first. In fact, they meet you exactly where you are in that mess, in the moment, in the middle of the heat of life, and being able to be present with that is such an important message to not only moms, but really everybody experiencing life today in society, and how we can show up with a little more compassion for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Truly. Truly. I think anything that we can do to support our physical body or the way that we're thinking that offers even the slightest interruption of a loop or a negative, you know, thinking or something that's going on in our body, even the slightest interruption in that gives us a moment to pivot. It gives us a moment to shift. It gives us an opening to pick a different thought or, approach our body in a different way. All these slight interruptions in whatever unhelpful thing that is happening, could be the way that we're thinking about something, a perception, a physical response we're having to something. The more interruptions we can create, the more space we have to replace. And the more things that we replace, maybe we don't need as many interruptions.
This has been really helpful, and I want to signal the importance that even through all of this, this is not practice or experience things that we should necessarily know how to do or get it right the first time. And also knowing when and how to ask for help. Is there something that we can leave for listeners around giving permission to find someone to talk to, a professional in the space, and not hold it all in or feel like we need to do it all ourselves?
Yeah. I think for me personally, what I would want to convey is that each person just inherently deserves to be heard and to feel seen and to feel like there's a space where they can explore themselves safely. It isn't something you need to earn through all of your goodness of things that you've done. It isn't something you need to earn. It's not something that you need to do enough good things to get. You just inherently deserve space to feel seen and heard and accepted and understood. And if there isn't a friend or something, and if that's in a professional space, you don't have to earn it. You don't have to wait to do the thing that says, okay, now I've done enough to get help, or now I've done enough things or been through enough things to get the help. Right? There's a lot of comparison. Well, this is hard, but I see that that's really hard over there for that person. So, like, why am I having such a hard time? Because I can see that that person is having a really hard time. If you're having a hard time, then you're having a hard time. And if you are feeling it, and if it's happening to you, that's enough. You don't have to wait for something to get harder to feel like it's hard enough to get help. It's just hard. It's just hard from the beginning. You don't have
I,
to wait.
I really love that you just touched on that. I think the saying is, comparison is the thief of joy. And also, it's something I often do in my own life is when things are going really difficult, I think of the worst things possible that other people are experiencing to minimize or help me move on from discomfort in that moment. And it doesn't make the discomfort go away. It doesn't make the thing not challenging. But I've just convinced myself that, well, it's not as bad as it could be. So I should just be okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that is a reality I think a lot of women might face as well. And so being able to acknowledge that just because I'm not okay, just because other people aren't okay, I can be not okay as well.
Yeah. If it's happening to you, if you are feeling it, that's enough. That's just enough. There isn't anything else that you need to wait for or do differently for help to be warranted or you being worthy of it. You just inherently are.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jenny, so much for joining us today and sharing these tools and micro practices with us, and really just grateful for your time.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing.